People in the village used to say, "Distance can reveal what love tries to hide." At the time, Amara never believed such words carried warning. To her, love was proven through sacrifice, and sacrifice was something she had already given in abundance. Before she left for Canada, she stood beside her husband Jomo under the acacia tree behind their mud brick home, where the evening wind stirred red dust around their feet. He held both her hands and promised that every coin she sent home would become the foundation of the life they had dreamed of building together. A larger house, farmland in their own name, children who would never know the hunger they had survived. His voice had trembled when he said he would wait for her, no matter how long the separation lasted. And because she had struggled beside him through drought, sickness, and years of poverty, she believed him without question. The journey abroad was harsher than anything Amara had imagined. The cold entered her bones. The city moved without kindness. She cleaned office buildings after midnight while others slept. She stood on aching feet in a food packaging factory through long mornings. She shared a cramped apartment with strangers and often ate the cheapest bread to save money. But every hardship felt easier when she pictured Jomo receiving her transfers and laying block upon block for the home they would one day share. Every month she sent money, sometimes nearly everything she had. And each time, Jomo answered with gratitude wrapped in sweet words. He spoke of progress. He said the walls were rising. He said neighbors admired her devotion. He said even village elders called her a woman of uncommon loyalty. Those messages became her comfort in lonely hours. When exhaustion nearly broke her, she would reread them. When winter darkness pressed against her window, she would imagine warm village sunlight falling over the house her sacrifice was building. Yet there were small things, almost invisible things, she pushed aside. Jomo began asking for more money than before. Cement prices had risen, he said. Then thieves had stolen materials. Then roofing costs had unexpectedly doubled. Each explanation came smoothly. Each sounded believable enough. And because trust often blinds where doubt might protect, she sent more. Back home, whispers had already begun where she could not hear them. Women at the market noticed Jomo wearing new clothes finer than a man building a house should afford. Men saw him spending evenings in places where married men did not linger without reason. Some had seen him laughing too closely with Nyasha, Amara's younger cousin, whose beauty often drew attention and whose ambitions reached further than her circumstances. But in villages, people sometimes prefer watching a fire spread to sounding alarm. Some pitied Amara, some feared involvement, some simply enjoyed gossip too much to interrupt the story. Only Amara's mother felt unease settling in her spirit. She once asked Jomo why construction had not been seen if so much money had arrived. He smiled and answered with practiced patience, saying supplies were stored elsewhere until the right season. The old woman wanted to believe him, yet something in his eyes seemed to shift too quickly. Something felt hidden. But old age had taught her suspicion can wound families if spoken without proof. So she stayed silent longer than she should have. Months turned into years. Amara kept working, kept sending, kept believing. And while she imagined a home rising in her absence, another future was quietly being built behind her back. One fed not by love, but by greed. One hidden beneath polite smiles and careful lies. She did not yet know the money she sent to preserve her marriage had begun funding the betrayal that would destroy it. But betrayal rarely arrives without leaving shadows first. And the shadows were already lengthening. At first, the rumors moved like smoke, impossible to grasp. too thin to seem dangerous. But smoke, elders say, never rises without fire. In the second year abroad, Amara began noticing Jomo's voice had changed. Not in words, but in weight. The warmth that once flowed naturally through his messages now sometimes felt rehearsed, as though affection had become something performed. He still called her his faithful wife. He still thanked her for every transfer. Yet often his replies came later than before. Sometimes days passed. When she asked why, he blamed poor network signals, long errands, community obligations. Each explanation sounded ordinary enough, but ordinary things repeated too often can carry hidden meaning. Still she refused suspicion. Doubt felt like betrayal of her own vows. She worked harder instead. She took extra shifts cleaning hotel corridors on weekends. She ignored the swelling in her hands. She stopped buying winter boots even when the old ones cracked. Every sacrifice became another wire, fastening her to the dream she refused to question. Back in the village, Jomo had grown accustomed to being admired. Men who once pitied his poverty now greeted him with respect. Women noticed his pressed shirts and polished sandals. He carried himself differently. Money, even borrowed money, had begun altering how he saw himself. And Nyasha saw it too. She had always been the cousin who smiled a little too long when others praised Amara. The cousin who listened when gifts were counted. The cousin who asked innocent questions about how much Canada paid. At first, her visits to Jomo were explained as family concern. She brought food to his house. She helped wash clothes. She claimed she checked on him because loneliness can tempt a man into bad habits. People accepted it, or pretended to. But one afternoon, an old woman selling cassava near the well saw something she could not dismiss. Jomo stood too close to Nyasha beneath the neem tree. Their laughter carried the softness of intimacy. The old woman frowned. Yet she told no one. In many villages, truth is often trapped by fear of causing conflict. Amara's mother heard whispers, but each came incomplete. One woman hinted Nyasha visited too often. Another mentioned Jomo had purchased a motorcycle, though no house had risen. When Amara's mother confronted him again, he smiled and said the motorcycle was for transporting building materials. Such was the smoothness of deception that even lies began sounding practical. Then came the request that should have awakened alarm. Jomo sent word the roofing stage could not proceed unless Amara sent a larger amount than ever before. Without it, he warned, all previous work might be ruined by coming rains. The sum was enormous. Nearly everything she had saved after 2 years of labor. For one long night, Amara sat in her cramped apartment, staring at the transfer form. Something inside her hesitated. A small voice asked why a nearly finished house still consumed endless money. But memory of his promises drowned the warning. She sent it. That transfer changed everything. With that money, Jomo's secret life expanded. A tailor was paid, gifts were bought. Nyasha began wearing cloth too expensive for her means. Some women noticed. Some laughed quietly behind their hands. Others shook their heads and said a storm was gathering. Meanwhile, Amara received a voice message from Jomo, describing walls painted and windows installed. He even claimed he had planted mango seedlings in the yard for the children they would have. Listening through cheap earphones in the factory break room, Amara smiled through tears. A coworker asked why she looked so happy. She answered, "Because my husband is building our future." She did not know in that very same week Jomo had been seen entering Nyasha's family compound after dark. And though betrayal was growing bolder, it still wore the mask of secrecy. But masks slip. They always do. And the first crack in Jomo's deception was already approaching, carried not by enemies, but by a witness who had finally grown tired of silence. The first person who chose conscience over silence was not a chief, nor a relative, nor even a friend. It was old Mama Sefu, the widow who sold vegetables outside the church and saw more than most, because people often forgot she was watching. Age had made her slow in body, but sharp in judgment. She had watched Jomo change, watched Nyasha pass too often by his path, watched gifts appear where hunger used to live. And what troubled her most was not the betrayal itself, but how boldly it had begun to breathe. One afternoon, while weighing tomatoes for a customer, she saw Nyasha wearing a gold necklace no village girl without wealth could easily own. Mama Sefu recognized it. She had seen Jomo bargaining for that same necklace in the district market weeks earlier. Her hands froze. In that instant, suspicion hardened into certainty. That evening, she went to Amara's mother. The old woman listened in silence while Mama Sefu spoke carefully, as though each word might wound. She did not accuse outright. She only said, "A wife far away deserves eyes that do not sleep." Amara's mother felt cold spread through her chest. For months she had fought her unease, calling it old woman's imagination. But now another voice confirmed what fear had whispered. Together they decided to confront Jomo once more. He arrived at the hut smiling, carrying oranges as though kindness could shield deceit. But this time, Amara's mother did not ask about cement or roofing. She asked directly why he had been buying gifts for Nyasha. The question struck him like a hidden spear. For one breath, his expression faltered. Then the performance returned. He laughed, said the necklace was a family favor, said gossip had poisoned old women's minds, said people envied a marriage surviving distance. And somehow, against reason, he almost sounded convincing. Even Mama Sefu left troubled, wondering if she had misread what she saw. Such is the power of practiced deception. It can make honest people doubt their own eyes. But truth was no longer content hiding. Weeks later, Amara called unexpectedly during an hour Jomo believed safe. Nyasha was in his house. He answered too slowly. His breathing sounded strained. Amara asked who she heard in the background. He said it was the radio, but she knew the sound of a woman laughing. A strange silence passed between them. For the first time in years, distrust entered her voice. "Who is there, Jomo?" He answered too quickly. "No one." The call ended, but unease did not. That night in Canada, Amara could not sleep. Snow struck the window. Her room felt smaller than ever. She replayed the laughter in her mind. Was it really a woman? Had loneliness made her imagine it? She hated herself for doubting. Yet something sacred had shifted. Trust, once cracked, never sounds the same when touched. The next morning, she nearly caught her mother, but stopped. If she spoke suspicion aloud, it might become real. So she did something else. She sent no money that month. For the first time, the transfers stopped. Jomo noticed immediately. His messages changed tone. Sweetness became urgency. He said workers were waiting. Materials would spoil. Disaster loomed. Then came guilt. Had she forgotten their shared dream? Had foreign life made her heart grow distant? Reading his words, Amara felt confusion turned slowly into anger. Why did every conversation return to money? Why did every emergency require her sacrifice? Questions she had buried began rising. And in the village, Jomo panicked. Without her money, plans he had made with Nyasha began trembling. Because there were plans now. Dangerous plans. Marriage plans, whispered in secret, as though Amara had already vanished from the world. One night, beneath moonlight, hidden behind Nyasha's uncle's granary, the two spoke of formalizing what had begun in sin. They did not know a boy tending goats nearby had enough to understand. And children, unlike adults, sometimes carry truth with fearless speed. By dawn, the first open rumors were moving through the village. Not whispers now, rumors. And once betrayal becomes rumor, exposure is rarely far behind. Rumor moved through the village faster than rainwater through cracked earth. By the time the goat boy story reached the market, women were already adding details. Men were shaking their heads, and those who had once pretended ignorance now spoke as if they had always known. Some said Jomo intended to take Nyasha as second wife in secret. Others said a proper wedding was already being discussed. Some swore gifts had been exchanged between families. Truth mixed with exaggeration, but beneath all of it stood something undeniable. The hidden affair no longer belonged to darkness alone. Amara's mother sent word for her daughter to call. When Amara heard the tremor in her mother's voice, her chest tightened. Even before the old woman spoke, she sensed life was dividing into before and after. "There are things being said," her mother whispered. "What things?" Silence hung for a moment too long. "About Jomo. About Nyasha." Amara felt the room tilt. She laughed first, not from joy, but disbelief so sharp it sounded almost wild. "My cousin? My husband? No, that cannot be." Her mother did not argue. She only said, "I pray it is gossip, but I can no longer keep quiet." After the call, Amara sat motionless on the edge of her bed. Outside, snow fell under orange streetlights. Cars passed. Somewhere a siren wailed. Yet all she heard was her mother's voice repeating like an echo. "About Jomo. About Nyasha." That night, she did not cry. She searched through old messages instead. She reread every promise, every request for money, every lie she had mistaken for devotion. Patterns emerged where love had once blinded her. Dates of transfers lined up with purchases others had mentioned. Long silences matched periods when rumors had first stirred. Even the laughter she heard during that call returned now with cruel clarity. The wound deepened, not because betrayal might be true, but because part of her already knew it was. The next morning, Jomo called repeatedly. She did not answer. Hours later, she finally did. His voice came soft, almost frightened. "Why are you avoiding me?" She asked only one question. "Are you with Nyasha?" A pause, tiny but fatal. Then outrage burst from him. "Who fills your head with poison? How can you insult me? After all I endure waiting for you." His anger was too fast, too defensive, and in that moment, something inside Amara hardened. For the first time, she did not apologize. For the first time, she did not try to preserve peace. She said quietly, "If you lie to me again, I will come home and learn the truth with my own eyes." Then she ended the call. Those words shook Jomo more than accusation ever could. Because until then, he had relied on distance. Distance had protected his deceit. Distance had made consequences feel unreal. But now, the ocean between truth and exposure seemed suddenly smaller. Panic drove him to Nyasha that same night. They met behind her family compound, voices low, fear rising. "What if she comes back?" Nyasha asked. Jomo stared into darkness. "Then we move faster." Faster toward what had once seemed impossible. Marriage. What began as secret betrayal was now rushing toward open theft. Within days, elders from Nyasha's side were quietly approached. Discussions began. Not of whether the union was right, but how quickly it could be done before Amara returned. And that was when greed crossed into something darker than infidelity. It became conspiracy. Meanwhile, in Canada, Amara made a decision she told no one. She would not send warnings. She would not argue over phones. She would not beg a liar for truth. She would come home. But she would come unannounced. A surprise. Just not the kind Jomo imagined. She began saving leave days. She checked flight prices at midnight. She hid the plan even from friends. And as she prepared in silence, the village prepared for something else. Wedding cloth was being measured. Goats were being selected. A date was being whispered. And neither Jomo nor Nyasha understood the trap closing around them. Because they believed the woman they betrayed was still far away. They believed she would arrive too late. They believed stolen happiness was almost theirs. But fate, as old storytellers say, often waits until arrogance blooms before striking hardest. And Amara's plane ticket had already been booked. Amara told no one when she booked the ticket. Not her friends abroad, not even her mother. Silence became her shield. She moved through her final workdays like a woman carrying fire beneath water, calm on the surface, burning underneath. At night, she folded clothes into a small suitcase and stared at the little gifts she had bought for Jomo over the years. A wristwatch, leather shoes, a wool sweater for cold mornings he would never know. She touched them, then left them behind. Back in the village, wedding plans moved quickly. Too quickly for something honorable. That alone should have warned them. But greed often mistakes speed for victory. Jomo had changed. Fear made him restless. He snapped at people. He watched the road too often. Yet still he pressed forward. He told himself Amara was bluffing, that she would never leave work abroad suddenly, that distance still protected him. Nyasha believed even more boldly. She had begun acting like a bride already. Women noticed her new pride. Her chin lifted higher, her voice sharpened. Some turned away from her at the well. Others muttered, "A stolen husband brings no blessing." But she ignored them. The date was fixed. 3 weeks. Amara arrived in the capital before dawn. As the bus carried her toward the village, every mile tightened something inside her. She looked out at familiar roads, dry fields, scattered huts, and felt both homecoming and dread. Part of her still prayed rumor had lied. But when she reached the village edge, something felt wrong. People stared. Too long. A woman carrying firewood nearly dropped her load. An old man looked at her, then looked away. Faces held not welcome, but pity. And Amara understood before anyone spoke. Something had happened. She reached her mother's hut, trembling. The old woman opened the door, saw her, and began to weep. No words, only tears. Then, from far off, faint but unmistakable, drums. Wedding drums. Amara turned slowly. "Whose wedding?" she asked. Her mother could barely whisper. "Go to the church." And in that moment, with drums sounding through the heat and betrayal waiting at the altar, everything she had sacrificed led her toward the truth. The church was already full when Amara arrived. Music drifted through the open doorway. Women ululated. Men laughed. Bright cloth moved in the sunlight. Then she stepped inside and saw Jomo, dressed as a groom. Beside him stood Nyasha in bridal white. For one moment, time stopped. Even breathing felt impossible. Someone near the door gasped her name. Heads turned. The priest froze. And Jomo saw her. His face drained. Fear replaced every trace of pride. No one moved. Then Amara walked forward. Slowly. Silently. Her footsteps sounded louder than the drums had. She stopped before them and looked first at Nyasha, then at her husband. Her voice, when it came, was calm enough to terrify. "So this is the house my money built?" The words struck the room like thunder. No one spoke. Jomo stammered, "Amara." But she lifted a hand. "Do not say my name with that mouth." A murmur moved through the church. Nyasha tried to stand tall, but her hands trembled. The priest stepped back. Then an elder rose. "What is this?" Questions burst from every side. "Whose money paid for this wedding? Is this true? Was the wife abroad deceived?" Voices rose. Shame spread through the room. Jomo tried to explain, said things were complicated, said loneliness changed him, said he meant no harm. But lies sound weak when truth stands in the doorway. Then Amara did something no one expected. She turned to the priest and said, "Continue." The church fell silent again. Even Jomo stared. If they have chosen disgrace, let them wear it fully. Those words would be repeated in the village for years. The ceremony finished under humiliation. No joy remained, no blessing felt clean. Guests left whispering, and before sunset, the whole village knew. The woman who sent money from abroad had returned and caught her husband marrying her cousin at the altar. But the wedding was only the exposure. The reckoning had not begun. By evening, Jomo came to Amara's mother's hut. He knocked until neighbors gathered. When Amara opened the door, he fell to his knees. "Forgive me," he said. "Blame temptation, blame weakness, blame Nyasha." But not once did he blame greed. Amara looked down at him as though seeing a stranger. Then she said, "You did not betray me in one day. You betrayed me every time you took what I earned and called it love." She shut the door. The next morning, elders called a hearing. The village gathered beneath a large fig tree. Questions came hard. Where was the house built with her money? There was none. Where had the transfers gone? Into clothes, into gifts, into the wedding, into lies. Even those who had defended Jomo lowered their heads. Then the chief spoke. "A man who steals from his wife steals from his own name." Restitution was ordered. Jomo would repay or lose family land. The judgment spread fast, and with it, disgrace. Nyasha's new marriage brought no triumph. Women avoided her. Visitors stopped coming. Even laughter in her yard disappeared. What was stolen had turned bitter. But something else happened too. Amara changed. She stopped looking broken, stopped speaking like a wounded woman. There was steel in her now. People noticed. Even Tawanda, the quiet grain merchant, noticed. He approached her after the hearing and said only, Truth may arrive late, but it does not lose its power. She looked at him, surprised, because for the first time since returning, someone had spoken to her without pity. And though betrayal had burned much of her old life to ash, something new, though small, had begun to stir. Weeks passed, and Jomo's downfall deepened. The land he fought to keep was sold to repay part of what he owed. The motorcycle was taken. Debts surfaced. Men who once praised him now mocked him. And inside his own house, peace died quickly because a marriage born in betrayal began feeding on suspicion. Jomo accused Nyasha of pushing him. Nyasha accused Jomo of ruining her name. Their arguments spilled into the yard. Neighbors heard. Some said this is the curse of stolen things. Then came the final humiliation. Nyasha learned Jomo had hidden other debts even from her. The man she helped betray Amara had deceived her too, and what she thought was victory turned to ashes. Meanwhile, Amara did something no one expected. She used what money she had left to lease a small grain stall. People supported her. Women bought from her first out of sympathy, then out of respect. Her strength had become its own testimony, and slowly prosperity began returning by honest hands. One afternoon, Jomo came to her stall, thin, worn, broken in ways pride could no longer hide. He said, "I destroyed my life." Amara answered, "No, you destroyed what was entrusted to you. There is a difference." He lowered his head, and for once he had no lie. He walked away with nothing, and Amara watched him go without hatred, only clarity. Because justice had already done what revenge could not. It had made betrayal carry its own punishment. And in the quiet that followed, Tawanda returned, not with grand promises, only with tea, conversation, patience, and the kind of respect betrayal can teach a wounded heart to recognize. What began as loss had not ended in ruin. It had ended in awakening. Tawanda never rushed what pain had made cautious. He walked beside Amara slowly, helped at the grain stall, fixed broken shells without being asked, brought small kindnesses that asked nothing in return. And for a long time, Amara kept her heart guarded. Betrayal had taught her the cost of trusting too easily. But character reveals itself in repetition. And Tawanda was steady. Where Jomo had taken, he gave. Where Jomo had lied, he spoke plainly. Where greed had wounded, patience began healing. Months passed. Then, one morning, word spread through the village. Jomo and Nyasha had separated. The marriage built through betrayal had collapsed under its own weight. No one seemed surprised. Some only said, "What is planted in dishonor rarely bears peace." Amara heard the news without triumph, only quiet understanding. Because by then, her life was no longer tied to their ruin. It was moving forward. One evening, beneath the same acacia tree where she had once believed false promises, Tawanda said, "A broken trust can still make room for a wiser love." She looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time since returning home, she smiled without pain behind it. In time, people began speaking less of the scandal and more of Amara's resilience. How the woman betrayed by husband and cousin rebuilt. How she lost everything she thought she was working for and found something better than what she had imagined. And that became the story stronger than the betrayal itself. Years later, people no longer pointed to the church when telling this story. They pointed to Amara's thriving grain business, to the home she built with honest hands, to the peace in her face, and to the man beside her who valued what another had betrayed. As for Jomo, His name became a warning spoken to young husbands who mistook loyalty for weakness. As for Nyasha, she learned too late that stealing another woman's place does not create your own. Both lived with consequences no court could fully impose. Because some punishments arrive through memory, through regret, through seeing what you destroyed flourish without you. One evening, seated outside her home as dusk settled over the village, Amara said something people repeated for years. Distance did not ruin my marriage. Deception did. But betrayal did not finish me. It revealed me. And perhaps that was the deepest justice of all. The money she sent abroad was stolen. The husband she trusted was false. The cousin she loved betrayed her. Yet, in losing what was built on lies, she gained what could stand on truth. And that is why elders say, greed may run fast, but truth walks farther. Because in the end, the woman they thought they had used became the one who rose. And those who fed on her sacrifice were left only with the emptiness they created.